You know that person, right? The one who's super confident, but, well, completely incompetent? Of course you do. We all do. But here's the scary thought. What if sometimes that person is us? Okay, let's unpack one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood ideas in all of psychology. And this quote from David Dunning himself, one of the guys who discovered this whole thing, it just nails the central problem. It perfectly captures this crazy paradox. It's a blind spot in our own minds. And the absolute kicker is you can't see your own blind spot. All right, so first up, let's talk about what I'm calling the confidence trap. And look, this isn't about us pointing fingers at other people, not at all. It's about taking a hard look at something we all do. This tendency to see our own abilities through, let's say, a pretty distorted lens. Yeah, this gap right here, this is really the heart of the whole thing. I mean, in our own heads, we can feel like a total rock star at something. Could be driving, telling a joke, I don't know, anything. The Dunning-Kruger effect is basically what's happening when that image we have of ourselves in the mirror just doesn't quite line up with reality. Okay, now we really need to nail down what this thing is and what it isn't. Because honestly, this idea gets thrown around and butchered all the time. It's so important to separate the internet meme version from the actual science. Okay, this is probably the single most important thing to get right. The popular myth, the thing you see in memes, is that this is just about stupid people, that they're too dumb to know they're dumb. Nope, that's not it at all. The actual science is way more nuanced. It says that for any specific skill, the people who are the worst at it are the most likely to have no idea how bad they are.
So here's the official definition. The two key things to lock onto here are cognitive bias and particular domain. This has nothing to do with general intelligence. It's about one specific thing. It could be grammar, chess, baking a cake, you name it. I mean, you could have a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who is an absolute genius in her field, but she might totally overestimate her ability to fix a leaky sink.
And this graph? Wow, this is from the original study back in '99, and it just lays it all out perfectly. So that red line, that's people's actual scores on a test, from worst on the left to best on the right. And the blue line, that's what they thought their score was. Just look at that huge gap over on the left for the worst performers. That right there, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, clear as day. They did pretty badly, but they walked out of there thinking they did just fine. And to put a hard number on that, get this. In that first study, folks who scored way down in the 12th percentile, so near the bottom, on average, they guessed they were in the 62nd percentile. That's not just being a little bit off, that is a massive, massive gap between reality and perception. But what's so wild is that this thing has a flip side. The same study found that the top performers, the real experts, actually tended to underestimate how good they were compared to everyone else. It's like a reverse Dunning-Kruger. For them, the task was so easy, they just kind of assumed, well, it must be this easy for everybody, right? Okay, so we've got the what. But the big question is why? Why does this happen? And this is where things get really interesting, because there's still a huge debate going on in the scientific community. So the original theory from Dunning and Kruger themselves is something they called a dual burden. It's a really cool idea. Basically, the skills you need to be good at something are the exact same skills you need to recognize how good or bad someone is at it. So if you're a terrible writer, for example, you lack the very tools to see that your own writing is terrible. Your incompetence literally makes you blind to your own incompetence. But there's another big theory out there, a powerful counterargument that says, hey, what if this isn't some deep psychological flaw? What if it's just a statistical illusion? This idea says it's really just a combo of two things. First, pretty much everyone thinks they're a little better than average. And second, a tricky statistical concept called regression to the mean. All that means is that random, extreme results tend to drift back toward the average over time. And this is what that statistical argument looks like in practice. On the left, you've just got a bunch of random data points. Total noise. But then on the right, you take that exact same random data and just group it into 4 buckets, the same way Dunning and Kruger did. And look what happens. You get a curve that looks almost identical to the Dunning-Kruger graph. It's a pretty strong case that maybe, just maybe, this whole thing is a statistical quirk, not a metacognitive one. So look, whether it's this dual burden blindness or just a tricky statistical artifact, honestly, the debate doesn't really matter for our next point, because either way, this gap between how good we think we are and how good we actually are has huge, serious consequences out in the real world. Yet, this isn't just some fun little brain teaser for psychologists to argue about. This stuff matters. This gap in self-awareness pops up in some pretty high-stakes places. We're talking aviation, medicine, and it also impacts the really personal stuff, like the career choices you and I make every single day. And the really critical thing here is that the damage goes both ways. You have the overconfident person, say a pilot, taking a risk they have no business taking. But then you have the flip side, the super talented expert who underestimates their own skills and never goes for that big promotion they totally deserve. But maybe the biggest danger of all, if you're blind to your own weaknesses, why on earth would you ever try to get better? And this idea isn't even new. Way before Dunning and Kruger were even born, someone like Charles Darwin was noticing the exact same thing. He basically said that it's ignorance, way more than knowledge, that makes people feel so sure of themselves. The philosopher Bertrand Russell pretty much said the same thing. He pointed out that one of the curses of the modern world is that the foolish are so cocksure, while the intelligent are just full of doubt. When you really know your stuff, you're also painfully aware of how much you don't know. But when you don't know much, well, you don't even know what you're missing. Which brings us right back to where we started, to the final and most important question. Look, it is so easy to spot this in other people. We do it all day long, but that's not the challenge. The real work, the thing that actually leads to getting better, is turning that lens back on ourselves. It's about having the guts to ask, okay, where are my blind spots? In what part of my life am I the confident amateur? And maybe more importantly, what am I going to do about it?